Hello again, everybody. This is Stuart Jacobowitz. I'm Senior Director of Business Development at FreeMind, and I'm pleased to be presenting today's webinar. Today we'll be discussing medical device non-dilutive funding, trends and opportunities. Thank you all for attending. I see we have people from around the world. I hope you have your favorite beverage ready. I forgot to mention, if you're a scotch drinker or a wine drinker, that is also acceptable. Now, today's subject, medical devices, is a little tricky. It's a little bit tricky to cover, mainly because it's almost in all areas of life sciences, anything from biodefense, infectious diseases, neurological disorders, cancer, really a lot of different areas. So what I'd like to do today is give you some specific opportunities as well as a broader overview, a big picture of the non-dilutive funding for medical devices. And I'll share with you also how we at FreeMind would go about pursuing opportunities in the medical device field. FreeMind is happy and pleased to present today's webinar, and to learn a little bit more about FreeMind, you can visit our website, www.freemindconsultant.com. To keep up to date with non-dilutive funding, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter and YouTube, as well as join our LinkedIn group, Non-Dilutive Funding for Life Sciences R&D. I'd also like to connect with you personally on LinkedIn, so feel free to invite me to connect or accept my invitation. By the way, I know someone asked, but for all of you, you should know that the slide deck is available for immediate download in the webinar sidebar under handout section, but I'll also be emailing it following the presentation. It'll also be available on our website. So let me just take a minute to tell you a little bit about FreeMind, a little background. We're a consulting firm, actually with the global leader in non-dilutive funding. And our main objective is to help our clients get as much money as possible from non-dilutive sources. We work across the life sciences, and we focus on the NIH. Of course, you know that's the National Institute of Health, the DoD, Department of Defense, as well as many other government organizations such as BARDA, CDC, FDA, NSF, and more. And of course, we'll also work with private foundations when it's relevant. We have 60 full-time employees, and we're growing, and we file on behalf of our clients on average 450 to 500 grant applications every year. Now, as you can imagine, that's a great deal of experience and knowledge and expertise, which is all put to work for each and every one of our clients to increase the chance of winning an award and to help our clients get the largest non-dilutive funding awards possible. Our clients include companies from small startups working out of their home, some their living room, some choose their kitchen, that's okay, some even the garage, and all the way up to the big pharma and everything in between. We also, of course, work with academics, research institutes, and university medical centers. Now, FreeMind, we like to look at ourselves as a tool, but I like to say we're more like a power tool, and we help you maximize your non-dilutive funding potential. We do this by offering two core services. First, the strategic assessment, and second, the grant production. When we conduct a strategic assessment, we identify the most relevant funding opportunities, and then we strategize to maximize the application's chances for success. This is extremely important, since if you don't know all of the relevant grant opportunities, that's money that you will never win. In addition, if you have a great science, but you apply for a grant that's not relevant to your science, or you use the incorrect mechanism, you will also not be successful despite the fact that your science is really deserving of funding. The grant production portion of our service includes us managing the complex project production process. Well, that's a mouthful. Project production process, leading a joint application writing and supporting final contract negotiations. I'll go into a little more in detail at the end of the presentation as to how we go through the process, and while of course we'd love to work with you, you certainly are welcome to try this on your own, and I certainly wish you sincerely the best of luck. Now, across the non-dilutive funding landscape in the U.S., we're talking about a pocket of money of more than $50 billion, that's billion with a B, in non-dilutive money for the life sciences, for R&D in the life sciences. And although just about all of the 27 institutes of the NIH offer funding opportunities for medical devices, there is one institute which places a great deal of focus on medical devices, and that's the NIBIB, or the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. In addition, of course, in addition to the NIH, there's also BARDA and the US Army, where there's also funds available for medical devices, and we'll go over some examples of current solicitations a little later in this presentation. CDMRPs, that's the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program that comes from the Department of Defense. It's also another great source of funding, so I suggest you keep a lookout for the next round of CDMRPs, which are usually announced around March, April time, end of Q1, early Q2. And of course, as I said before, private foundations. Now, it's interesting to note that out of the more than $50 billion allocated to funding the life sciences, a major portion of that, about $34 billion, or a little more than 60%, comes from the NIH. The NIH's fiscal 2018 budget is $34 billion, and once again, it's an increase over past year. And this despite everyone's fear and President Trump's threat to cut the NIH budget. So not only was it not cut, it was actually increased. And of that $34 billion, around $26 billion is devoted for extramural research, such as research project grants and R&D contracts. Now, we see here where the NIH is spending its money, but before you go and add up these numbers, it's important to note that these categories are not mutually exclusive. There's a lot of overlap. We see here that funds are allocated for clinical research, genetics, cancer, infectious disease, and a lot more areas. So where are the medical device dollars hiding? You should know that in each of these categories there's money hiding, which is going towards R&D for medical devices. By the way, a couple of the more obvious places, biotechnology and bioengineering, which you see on this graph, are two categories where most probably a good chunk of the funding is going towards medical devices. However, remember that each of these categories, and in fact just about every NIH institute, offers funding for R&D of medical devices. Now, having said that, the NIH institute providing the most funding for medical devices is certainly the NIBIB. It's the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. And who is the NIBIB, or what is the NIBIB? So their mission is to improve health by leading development and accelerating the application of biomedical technologies. And also their mission is to integrate the physical and engineering sciences with the life sciences to advance basic research in medical care. So unlike other NIH institutes, the mission of the NIBIB is not limited to a single disease. It's not limited to cancer or neurological disorders or a group of illnesses or even a particular population. In fact, the NIBIB is the only NIH institute to fund platform technologies without the need to specify an organ or a disease. Now, if you look at their goals, you can see that they're looking to integrate engineering with the physical and life sciences. They're looking for point of care, wireless, personal health informatic technologies, and they're looking to transform advances in disease mechanisms into precise medical diagnostics and therapeutics. This is just to mention a few of their goals. Now, the NIBIB is a great place to start if you're in the medical device field, and I'll be showing and discussing some NIBIB solicitations very shortly. Just to give you another idea, a quote from Dr. Roderick Pettigrew, the director of the NIBIB. He still is director. I think he announced that he's stepping down soon, but he said that medical device makers should focus on creating low-cost, non-invasive mobile technologies, but still work on medical moonshots that change the world. So this gives you an overall idea behind what the NIBIB is looking for, to reduce the healthcare burden and to come up with groundbreaking technologies. Now, in this presentation, I'll share some opportunities from NIH's, the NIBIB, NINDS, NCI, as well as from the US Army and BARDA. So let's start looking at some examples from the NIH, which, as we pointed out earlier, is the largest contributor to US non-dilutive funding And let's start with the NIBIB. So here you see the NIBIB, which by the way is the newest of NIH research institutes, and it offers funding in the scientific program areas listed here. Lots of programs, lots of areas. You can read them yourself. Lots of really interesting areas. Some of the new ones that were added this year were connected health, immunoengineering. Lots of really interesting areas. It's quite a comprehensive list, but don't worry, again, you don't have to copy the list or memorize it. I'll be sending out the slide deck to you, so you'll have it all right in front of you. And of course, you can also look on their website. So let's get into a few of the solicitations. What we have here in front of you is an R21 Exploratory Developmental Bioengineering Research Grant, or as they call it, a BRG. An EBRG. Now, participating in this grant are a bunch of NIH institutes, including the NCI, National Cancer Institute, NIAMS, that's for arthritis, musculoskeletal, and skin disease, NICHD for child health and human development, also the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and the NINDS for neurological disorders and strokes. The purpose of this opportunity is to encourage submission of applications which establish the feasibility of technologies, techniques, or methods that explore a unique multidisciplinary approach to biomedical challenges and are high risk but have high impact, and develop data which can lead to significant future research. Then EBRG application may propose hypothesis-driven discovery, hypothesis-driven and discovery-driven developmental or design-directed research, and is appropriate for evaluating unproven approaches for which there are minimal or no preliminary data. Yes, you did hear me correctly. This solicitation requires little or no preliminary data. However, from our experience, while technically no preliminary data is needed, we still recommend that you have at least some preliminary data for your R21. It's also important to point out that this solicitation accepts applications for either clinical or preclinical or non-clinical trial projects. Funding for this R21, as in for most R21s, is up to $275,000 over 2 years, with no more than $200,000 in any 1 year. And since we do have some attendees here from outside the U.S., companies and those interested in non-dilutive funding from outside the U.S., it's important for you to know that you are eligible to apply for this opportunity. Non-U.S. applicants are welcome. So if this solicitation is relevant for you, now is a good time to get started. As you see, the deadline is coming up in February. And let's move on to an R01, the Bioengineering Research Grant, just the BRG. This is an R01. Participants of this include NIBIB, NCI, NEI, that's the I Institute, NIAD, NIAMS, and a whole bunch more. Now, if you'll note here, there is no funding cap. It needs just to reflect the scope of your work. However, we recommend up to $500,000 a year. Since you do need to get pre-approval if you want to request more than $500,000, which you certainly can do if you have enough time. You need to do that within enough time. And the maximum period for this funding opportunity is 5 years. So that's altogether up to almost $3 million when you add on the overhead and indirect. The goal for a BRG is to drive the development and speed up the adoption of promising tools and technologies that can address important biomedical research problems for which there's a scarcity of solutions. They're looking for a synergistic partnership between engineering, life, physical, and computational sciences, and where the unique skills of each discipline combine to enhance the understanding of life science process or the practice of medicine. It's also important to note here that this solicitation accepts applications that either propose to do clinical trials or not for clinical trials. Either way, it's fine. And once again, non-U.S. applicants are welcome to apply. The deadline here is a little bit over 2 months, a few days later than the R21. It's on February 16th. So actually, no, I mixed it up. This is a few days early. This is February 5th. The R21 was February 16th. So got to get moving if you want to apply for this application solicitation. Next, we have a UO1. That's a cooperative agreement. The BRP, the Bioengineering Research Partnership. Again, the NIBIB and a number of other institutions join and participate. There's no funding cap. Just needs to show the scope of the work, needs to justify your funding request based on the work that you're going to do, and is also for up to 5 years. Now, the goal is to accelerate the development and adoption of promising tools and technologies that can address important biomedical problems, and to establish these tools and technologies as robust, well-characterized solutions that fulfill an unmet need and are capable of enhancing our understanding of life science processes or the practice of medicine. Cooperative agreement means that you're getting more involvement, more hands-on, more help from the experienced people at the NIH, which is certainly a great thing to have. Again, this is good for either clinical trials or otherwise non-clinical trials. And once again, our non-American friends are welcome to apply. Here you have a little bit more time. This has a non-standard deadline of May 8th, but certainly something worth looking into, and I encourage you to check it out. It's really a great opportunity. Let's take a moment to look at the IMAT. The IMAT is Innovative Molecular Analysis Technologies. This IMAT program is almost 20 years old, started in 1998. And it's focused on stimulating and accelerating development, integration, maturation, dissemination of the most novel and highly innovative technologies in support of cancer research and medicine. Obviously, this is from the NCI, the National Cancer Institutes, and this IMAT supports, this whole IMAT program supports highly innovative technology development research, as well as molecular analysis for cancer research and clinical care and cancer-relevant biospecimen science. Now, as you see here from the nice little diagram I drew, there are two mechanisms. There's the R21 and the R33. So the R21's focus is to conduct high-risk exploratory research with an emphasis on innovation and demonstration of technical feasibility. This R21 seeks grant applications that propose exploratory research projects focused on the early stage development of highly innovative technologies that improve the quality of the sample used for cancer research or clinical care. The R33, on the other hand, while the R21 is for earlier stage and high risk, the R33 is for advanced development and validation of technology or applications for which proof of concept has been achieved. It seeks applications that propose exploratory research projects focused on further development and validation of emerging technologies, and that they offer novel capabilities for targeting, probing, or assessing molecular and cellular features of cancer biology for basic or clinical cancer research. Now, all four solicitations you see here are not for clinical trials. I repeat, they're not for clinical trials. The R21's budget is up to a direct costs of up to $400,000, slight difference, over 3 years, with no more than $200,000 in direct costs in any single year. The R33 has direct costs limited to $300,000 per year, and that's for up to 3 years. Now, all of these R21s and R33s have the next application due date of February 28th, so we got a little bit of time, but really should get started already because there's a lot of work involved in these. And once again, these are friendly. I know people have been asking me a lot with President Trump that he's blocking non-US applicants, but these once again are friendly and welcome applicants from non-US entities, and we wish everyone good luck. Now, we've looked at a number of NIH solicitations. They're all pretty specific and targeted. And while these are only a small sample of all the solicitations out there, what do you do if you can't find a specific solicitation which fits exactly your research? So I like to say, don't despair, just hop on the bus. And by that I mean the NIH Omnibus solicitations. These are also known as parent announcements or investigator-initiated solicitations, also sometimes called unsolicited opportunities. And as their name suggests, these omnibus solicitations are opportunities which are unsolicited, or they have no specific research target, where you pitch your ideas, your science, and research to the relevant and appropriate program officer at the NIH. These omnibus solicitations include R21s, investigator-initiated exploratory developmental research grants. These have funding of up to $275,000 for up to 2 years. Also, the RO1s. The RO1s are investigator-initiated research project grant, which offer, the RO1s are investigator-initiated opportunities which offer, sorry, I'm just having, there we go, just having a little technical issue. The RO1s, they offer funding of up to $500,000 a year for up to 5 years, and the SBIRs and STTRs, which are also investigator-initiated, and they have their own deadlines and their own funding amounts. Now, most NIH institutes participate in these omnibus solicitations. So, for example, if you have a medical device project in the neurological space, you could potentially use the SBIR to try to send an application to the NINDS or have it reviewed by the NINDS. It's important to note that roughly 60% of all awards across NIH are unsolicited or investigator-initiated. So that's why we believe this should be this is a very important part of your non-dilutive funding strategy. R21 deadlines are February 16th. That's the next one. RO1s are February 5th. SBIRs are coming up in January, then again in April. So now's a great time to work on these opportunities. So keep in mind, if you can't find any specific solicitation which fits your research, or even as a first step, don't miss these valuable opportunities, or as I like to say, take a ride on the omnibus. Let's move on to BARDA, the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. Great agency. They're very responsive, really great to work with. By the way, we highly recommend that you get a tech watch where they'll meet with you, discuss your science, ask questions, and basically tell you if you're ready for BARDA or not. So what BARDA essentially tries to do, you see here the classic stage of development, which starts with discovery and preclinical. What BARDA tries to do is take you through the so-called valley of death, taking products from the NIH, primarily from the NIAID, but taking them all the way through to clinical activities. And one of the nice things about BARDA is that if you develop a product of interest to them, in addition to funding your R&D, they will often buy and stockpile your product, often in large quantities. So aside from funding you, also could be a great client. And don't worry, not an exclusive client. They're happy for you to sell to others as well. Now, BARDA's mission is to develop and procure medical countermeasures that address CBRN issues, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear accidents and incidents, as well as attacks, pandemic, influenza, and emerging infectious diseases. They just issued this BAA that you see in front of you, BAA 18100 SOL 003. And it covers 14 different R&D areas of interest. These include CBRN vaccines, antitoxin and therapeutic proteins, antibacterials, radiological, nuclear, threat medical countermeasures, burn medical countermeasures, diagnostics, and so on. Nice thing about this, there's no budget limits. You just need to justify your budget. The way it works is you start with a white paper, which you submit to BARDA, and they review it, and then they decide who they invite to submit the full application. Now, while the white paper can be submitted at any time until this BAA expires, which is actually in a little less than 2 years, on October 31, 2019, they do have submission dates, submission deadlines, whereby they get this white paper, and then they turn it around from there. The next submission deadline is January 31, followed by April 30th. And don't forget, they recommend and we recommend that you get a tech watch to help you with this process. Moving on to the U.S. Army, the Department of Defense, and how they deal with medical devices. So the U.S. Army, or USAMRIC in this case, the U.S. Army Medical Research and Material Command, they just issued this new BAA, as you see here, W81XWH18 SBAA1. I wish I knew what the number means. Now, these something new. They used to be 1-year BAAs. Now they just issued this is open for 5 years. However, they will be issuing amendments every year. Here again, the budgets are not capped. But of course, once again, you have to have them reflect the scope of the work, and you can ask for funding for up to 5 years. Now, what USAMRIC is trying to do here is to provide solutions to medical problems of importance to the American service member at home and abroad, as well as the general public at large. Their research areas of interest are outlined here very broadly. However, when you read through the solicitation, you'll see each of these topics: military infectious diseases, combat casualty care, military operational medicine, etc. So each of these is described in great detail in the solicitation of what their interest is and what they're looking for. You can find this BAA online. If you can't find it, drop me an email and I'll be happy to send it to you. Important to keep in mind that, like its name, broad agency announcement, is a very broad subject, so it may not spell out your specific solution, but rather something more in general. So you can be in touch with them to try to understand a little bit more if what you have, your R&D project, is of interest to them. Now, projects under this BAA must be for basic and applied research, and part of development is not related to development of a specific system or hardware procurement. The project must be for scientific study and experimentation directed toward advancing state-of-the-art or increasing knowledge or understanding, rather than focusing on a specific system or hardware solution. Once again, here they ask for a pre-proposal or pre-application, and then they decide who they invite back to submit the full application. And generally, the way it works with the DoD and BARDA is you start, like I said, with the white paper. This ranges anywhere from 2 to 10 pages, which is a very high-level overview of the project. Now, this is a extremely critical stage because most applications don't get past this stage. So you should put a lot of thought and effort into this. This is what decides if you move forward or not. Even though it's a short paper, as I said, 2 to 10 pages, you need to really dedicate a lot of thought and effort here. About 90 days after you submit, you should hear back, and they let you know if you're invited to submit a full application. And then usually you have about another 45 to 90 days to submit the full application, which means once you're invited, you got to really start working fast. Your full application is reviewed for technical merit, then takes up to 6 months, give or take, and then you get a response, and then from there, if it's positive, you enter into the third stage of cost negotiations. Now, DoD and BARDA are similar, but sometimes the time frames are sometimes a little different. So to summarize what I've been trying to tell you here for the last 25 minutes or so, is that funding is available for medical devices at all R&D stages, from early proof of concept, preclinical, clinical, late clinical, even phase 3 for efficacy trials. There's always going to be funding available, whether it's neurological disorders, biodefense, infectious disease, cancer, etc., etc. Just look and you'll find the opportunities, and these really are great opportunities and a great way to fund your company. You just need to know where to look, how to look for the opportunities, and then submit a grant application which meets all of the solicitation guidelines. What are the guidelines, and what do they look for once you've submitted the grant applications? So let's take a moment to look at the NIH review process, which is similar to the other review processes of other government agencies. What they're basically doing when they review and consider whether to fund your application is they weigh the strengths versus risks. The way they do this is first looking at two things. They look at responsiveness and competitiveness. What that means is, are you responsive to the solicitation? Because again, no matter how good your science is, if you're not responsive to the solicitation, you will not be awarded. And are you competitive? When we talk about competitiveness, they basically look at 5 criteria. And on these 5 criteria is how they score you. They score you on the significance of your research to public health. How significant is it? Is it innovative? Are you going to really make a change with your approach? They look at the leadership. Do you have the right leadership in place? Does the PI and the key personnel have the expertise and experience to successfully lead this kind of project? They look at your environment. Can it support the work you propose? For example, do you have the proper lab space? But ultimately, what makes the difference between a good application that is not awarded and one that is awarded is your scientific approach, the milestones, the specific goals. And as we always say, ultimately, top-notch scientific approach is what wins awards. Now, we strongly believe in non-dilutive funding. We strongly believe that it should be part of every company's strategy of fundraising for a number of reasons. First of all, the money is great. It's non-dilutive, so you keep your ownership, you keep your share of the company. In addition, and possibly some would even argue more importantly, is the validation which comes from going through this stringent process from the NIH or DoD and being accepted and being awarded. This has been shown to increase the valuation of the company, to attract investors, and it's really extremely valuable to the growth of a company. So whether it's with us or on your own, we strongly suggest that you do not miss out on non-dilutive funding for your company. So how do we do this? We know we've learned over these past 18 years that it's important to take a systematic and strategic approach. First, you need to know the interest of the institute. What's on their agenda? What are they looking to fund? What will not get funded because it's not within scope or was within scope in previous years? You need to communicate with the program officers. Then you compile a list of all the relevant opportunities which match the projects you're looking to fund, and you make sure you target the correct mechanisms. Now, in order to lower your risk, you need to focus your project application. Focused applications have a higher chance of being favorably reviewed. Now remember, the NIH doesn't fund companies or labs, they're funding projects. So you don't want your proposal to come across to reviewers as overly ambitious or unrealistic. And leverage on research collaborations, that's extremely important. Whether or not the mechanism requires it, or in a case where there's a gap in your capabilities, it's important to collaborate. Take on consultants, statisticians, or outsourced work you're less proficient at or don't have the expertise to complete. Make sure to ask for what's necessary. Don't inflate the budget or ask for too little. Either way, they'll say you're not realistic and you don't really know what it is that you're looking for. So you have to have accurate budget, which shows that you really are realistic and you have a good understanding of your project. It's also important to make sure to present a complete project. Have one comprehensive storyline. And of course, there's maximizing your potential. And the way we do this is, first of all, by conducting the strategic assessment where we identify all relevant funding opportunities. We then move on to create, once we have strategic assessment in place, we create the multi-submission strategy, where we basically spell out how we're going to work together to produce and submit as many of these grant applications that we've come up with. And finally, we get down to the production work, where together with our clients, we produce and submit as many grants as possible. That's our multi-submission strategy. Now, before we end and go to take a look to see if there's any questions here, I wanted to let you know about our upcoming 13th annual Non-Dilutive Funding Summit, which will be taking place in San Francisco on Wednesday, January 10th, during the JP Morgan week. It's a free educational event. We'll have presentations by representatives from BARDA, SAMRIC, NINDS. Also have a couple of companies who will share their successful non-dilutive funding journey, and a few other surprise speakers that we'll let you know about in the coming weeks. Additionally, our managing partner and VP will be hosting one-on-one meetings at this event and throughout the week, actually, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you. So if you're interested in this, please drop me a note, send me an email, and we'll certainly be in touch with you to schedule a time. So with that, we've come to the end of today's webinar, and I thank you for attending. Just going to take a quick look here and see if there are any questions. Yeah, the usual question. Yes, the slides will be later. There also will be a recording of this, which will be on YouTube, and I will also try to send you a link in that email as well. Yes, someone points out about the SBIRs. I did mention that that the solicitations I mentioned, and I pointed out, were open to applicants from around the world, but you are correct. You point out these SBIRs, I did not specify SBIRs, is a program that's exclusively for US applicants. It's about 3.5% of the budget goes towards small business, innovative research, and STTRs. So for that, you do need to be a US applicant, but certainly by far, most opportunities are open to applicants from around the world. Okay, I see there's a question here. If FreeMind has medical writers, or does the company take the lead on writing the application? Our staff, our professional staff, all have either a PhD or a master's in the sciences. So many of them actually do also have MBAs and different English writing degrees. Our team is very experienced in the medical, all the different medical areas, but we're not claiming to be the medical experts. You guys are the medical experts. We are the grant experts. Our expertise is in what we call grantsmanship. Our team understands all the sciences. They will understand and whatever is necessary so they can write a coherent, clear, well-written application. But you guys are the experts in your sciences, and that's how the process worked, and has worked quite successfully for all these years. Looks like that's all the questions we have here, and we're just about out of time here. Once again, feel free to email me, stewart@freemindconsultants.com. You can also call me. My number is there. I'll be sending out the slide deck, and I look forward to being in touch with you, all of you, and happy to speak about your own personal non-dilutive funding questions and issues. Hopefully we'll also get to see you at JP Morgan or one of the other conferences throughout the year where FreeMind attends. And with that, I will say goodbye, and depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. and I wish you all the best. Have a good day.